All right, so today we have with us today Nabil Mohamed. He is the VP of Product at Instabug. Very interesting guy. I'm sure he got a lot of product experience from prior roles as well as in Amazon and Microsoft. He is a Harvard Business School and a American University at Cairo alumnus. Like I said, he is currently the VP of Product at Instabug, which is a bug reporting app that helps mobile developers understand what is going on the mobile user side. I'm sure Nabil can add more layers of understanding there. It's a quickly growing application, especially during COVID, where I guess mobile usage is on the rise. And last I checked, more than 2 billion devices are actually running the app across the world. That number may have changed since I looked it up. And the startup originated in Egypt, but has since expanded to the US. They've raised successfully funding, and they're poised to become what may be the first unicorn coming out of Egypt. I'm very happy to have Nabil with us. And I have a few questions for you, Nabil, that I think would be interesting for our listeners to see what you think about them and hear maybe some pearls of wisdom coming from you.
Absolutely. It's great to be here. Thank you for having me. And hopefully I can be helpful.
I'm sure you will. All right. Well, first question I had was, since you're head of product, one of the most important parts that a product manager needs to be focused on is understanding, obviously, the users, understanding customers, and making sure that whatever we're building as a team, they are actually serving a purpose and solving a problem, a real problem that the users or customers are facing. How do you go about to make sure that your product team is constantly thinking about the customers in mind and making sure that you're solving real problems?
Well, I think there's two things you need to be doing. One of them is more traditional than the other, and the other frequently gets dropped and makes the difference between whether you have a good product or a great one. So the more traditional one is something that's especially transferable across product orgs. It's not restricted to an industry, which is just knowing your customer through the lens of the data that you have. So this is just standard spreadsheet work, kind of, but doing it well, not just at a surface, like what features do they use the most or something, but like really dive into the data, like take out anomalies of any sort. Try to falsify your hypotheses constantly, right? Before ever saying, hey, 70% of users like feature A more than feature B. Oh, what's that based on? Oh, well, I looked up the usage over the past 3 months or something. Is that really enough to drive that conclusion? No. Well, I mean, how deeply was the feature used? Did they like it? Did they use it again? Was there repeatable usage? Do they use it well and how it's intended, even if you don't use it frequently? If the one that was used frequently is too frequent, is that maybe a bad sign that it actually doesn't, achieve its goal from the first try or whatever? Should they even be doing that, right? Is there no way to automate it or to fold it up into something else? So I find that like people say data analysis like this thing like, oh, don't just be in front of your spreadsheets doing your thing without talking to customers. And that's correct. But I find that even that part, not many people actually do well. Like if you're going to do spreadsheet work.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Yeah, no. Like even before talking to the customer, like just understanding the customer through the lens of the various like activity and usage data and satisfaction data that you have. Even with that, like, and there are tools that you have, but I've only found a handful of people who really dive into it deeply enough to be like, all right, this is what we know. It's nuanced. It's not that straightforward. There's no absolute truths. And now we'd like to talk to, the following cohorts of customers to understand more, because like we're not quite sure about the severity of this or that item or the weighting of one thing over the other. But just like really solid, high quality, comprehensive, multidimensional data analysis is, I think, rare actually. And it's ironic because data is everywhere now. And then the second bucket is the one that you referred to, which is whatever you do, like, even if you have geniuses at the spreadsheets, you will always have to go and talk to customers. Now, this is true for any industry, but it's especially true for industries that have limited network effects, like SaaS, like B2B SaaS especially. So there, like the sample size of customers, of actual people who sign contracts with you, is small, right? It's not like millions of consumers, I don't know, uploading or browsing photos or something. No, it can be in the tens of thousands, but it's still small enough that actual dialogue and qualitative feedback just tells you so much more than anything you can do. Even in a survey that you like, whose questions you craft really carefully, if you don't have that free-flowing improvisational element of the dialogue where they show you how they actually use whatever product that you have, and they're like, look, like this is what I'm thinking when I go here, this is what I'm thinking when I go there, and you're like, wow, this just dispels so many assumptions that I had. If you don't have that, that's bad. If you don't have that in B2B SaaS, that's really, really bad. So what I do with my team is, if you're going to look at the data, let's look at the data well. I'm going to push back. We're going to have plenty of conversations on like which sources this came from, how consistent are they, right? Have you really used the scientific method to eliminate this or that? Like, are you approaching your analysis surgically? And then the second part is, how are you talking to customers right now? Obviously, we have many threads and channels coming in of like, how our customer support teams interact with customers. And then they kind of occasionally write to us saying like, this customer said this customer said that. So that's useful, right? And we call that pulses. So it's literally just constant pulses of information from customers. But then woven into that, and of course, checking your pulses every day is a given. Like every product manager on my team does that routinely. And you'll even occasionally find like entire dialogues on certain pulses that happen on the same day. The second thing is like you build in mechanisms to talk to the customers on an ongoing basis. These are either potential customers that you're still trying to get in. So like these mainly belong in the sales pipeline, which is where we like to try to integrate with sales. So it's like, hey, if you're having a technical discussion with a customer, if they're trying to understand what you offer, so please pull us into the discussion. We're happy to help here. The second part is existing customers. Like, what are you using now? How are you using it? And then the third part is customers that we lost either before we even gained, like, it was a deal that broke down, we lost them in favor of a competitor, or we lost after having used us. Again, super relevant. Like, what exactly did you see in us? Why did you ultimately choose to leave or go with someone else? If we did this or this or that, would this bring you back? Oh, is it not enough? Then what's missing? Just the whole body of feedback we receive from mechanisms like this, and we do this like several times a week. Every single product manager just like comes every week into our planning meeting with like all sorts of insights. Like, hey, I talked to this customer and they said XYZ, and I actually think they have a point. So I'm going to go back, pair this with some data analysis, and probably propose that we change our roadmap so that we do this instead of this first. So that's what we do. These two bodies of things, and then within them doing things properly.
Right. And I'm glad that you bring up those two aspects, because data alone is not enough. You need to empathize with customers to understand the data and use the data to also make sure that you are solving the problem for the customer. You brought up a very important point as well, that there's a lot of data, but data analysis as an not just a science, but as an art as well, is not as well understood and practiced, given that there is so much data. And I think that's especially true in Egypt and in the Middle East. It's, good product management is something that's people are still learning. And I think even in the US, it's a relatively new role. And I'm wondering, because you talk about like understanding the why behind what is it that we're trying to build, what kind of relationship does your product team, or at least they aspire to have, what kind of relationship with engineering? Because in some organizations, people tend to see engineering as executioners, right? Like they execute. And so we give them orders, or we give them requirements and ask them to build things for us. We've seen that that doesn't necessarily work, especially if you're trying to build a product that scales. Um, what what kind of relationship does your product team have with your engineering team, and how do they work together?
It's very close. They're stuck at the hip. Like we don't like we the engineers and engineering leads that we hire are way too smart um, for us to just rely on them on our execution. That's like assuming they're okay with this, which I don't imagine they would, because these are like hugely driven individuals with a lot of with a lot to give and a lot of ownership. But even assuming that they were okay with that, we would still be stupid for not taking advantage of their knowledge and perspective in the early stages of product design and product discovery. And so we actually have a layout, a structure right now whereby, we're divided into squads, and each squad has a product manager and engineering manager who work together in parallel on every single, item in their stack rank. And, they know from very early on what we want to do. They have perspective. They give us a really cool line of sight on what pitfalls to avoid. And it ends up that they kind of almost design the product with us. And that's especially true for people who are, who don't frequently code themselves, right? Like they're a lead, or they're kind of a senior engineer, and they'll jump in and do a commit, like if there's nobody to do it, like it'll take them 15 minutes because they've done it a million times. But for the most part, they're involved in big design and architectural discussions, like what is it that we're trying to do here? Why do we want to do this? Why do we want to do it now? And we're sure about this, so let's just do it now. We need to validate this, so let's go out and talk to customers. They're just a great partner. That's really all I can say about it.
Do the engineers on your team actually talk to customers?
Occasionally. So the engineering managers, right, who are the closest people to product, yes, they jump on calls with customers all the time, especially when it's like, our customers are in and of themselves technical teams, right? So what we do is we integrate our software development kit with apps that belong to companies with millions of users, usually, or hopefully, and these apps are on mobile. And so the people using us are people who are integrating with our SDK to understand what is going on with their app, right? Like how many bugs it has, how many crashes it has, how many hangs it has, where this happens, why this happens, who this happens to, how to approach troubleshooting it. So you're on the phone with like one of the mobile teams of like Lyft or Verizon or Adobe. And while you as a product manager can certainly answer a lot of their questions and stuff, it's just a totally different thing when you have like your just badass engineering lead there saying like, hey, why didn't you use this API library? Or did you are you in debug mode or not? Like, hey, just send me the link of the URL that you're the dashboard that you're looking at. Oh, it seems like you have a bug in your code or whatever it is. Like that level of knowledge and just badass expertise is amazing. It really adds value. So yeah, they're on calls with customers all the time.
That's great to hear. It's refreshing to hear, because when I see it being done, it's always like you said, it just feels great. And I also see that that knowledge is to some extent contagious, right? Like product people start learning more from the engineers and vice versa. And that's a great thing to have.
That's true.
Moving on. So I'm assuming there is an uptake because of COVID. People are using their cell phones more. But there also are challenges that comes with this new reality that we're in right now, right? Most of the team are remote. I don't know about Egypt, but here in the US, it's still the case. People are working remotely. That may have, that must have had challenges thrown your way. What kind of challenges did you have with such a remote team? And what are you doing about it?
Good question. So the challenges that we have are more about micro coordination than anything else. Meaning the following, like, because thankfully, and we're lucky to be in this sector really, we don't have boots on the ground. Like, we don't have an operations team. So there's nothing inherently physical that we do that requires a part of the company or all of the company to physically be someplace.
Mm-hmm.
And so very objectively speaking, we can technically, and we have been working remotely, right? The product is just ones and zeros, developed completely like in air-conditioned rooms from A to Z, right? And so that's the good thing about being in a software as a service industry. So our planning process, our road mapping process, our engineering management process, our product planning process, for the most part, have not been affected, right? We've been able to migrate tools, use conferencing or whatever. And when we really, really, really need to meet for work, and that hasn't happened with me, then maybe we go to the office or some outdoor place and, obey precautions and everything. So on paper, like, it's fine. Like, it hasn't affected us to a degree that I can say is harmful. However, function to function, you'll find big variances. So with functions like engineering, where for large sections of each month or each quarter, an engineer wants to be left alone to be able to deeply problem solve something and code, without having people interrupt them or having noise in the office or whatever every 5 minutes, that's super valuable, right? And so a lot of the engineers that I've talked to are like, I love working remotely. Like, COVID is, not to be insensitive, but
a blessing.
I know you'll take this in the, yeah, exactly, a blessing in disguise in that way.
Mm-hmm.
However, there are a lot of elements or a lot of functions that don't feel the same way, right? So, for example, with product, and that's the one I'm going to speak about. As a product manager, your job, like, only I would say not more than 30 or 40% of the job is sitting down and writing product requirements and reviewing use cases and reviewing designs and all of that stuff.
Right.
But a lot of what you do day to day is just forming relationships, right? Jumping in to understand one thing or the other, like going in and out of meetings, thanking someone, asking someone to do better, catching up with someone for coffee and understanding how they see the world and how they can make the product better. And so it's a very dynamic, in-person, walk and talk type job. It's, at least that's how I did it, right? And so trying to recreate all of that beautiful kind of set of coincidences that you had in the office, trying to take that and kind of turn it into a list of meetings that you have in your calendar is obviously, it's not the same thing. You can't just like kind of call a meeting coffee and and then sit and have coffee and talk about something.
Yeah.
So the way that this affects the company is that sometimes you have to over communicate and over meet to get stuff done, properly, because every single time you meet, you're like, oh, we uncovered another blind spot, or I can't believe we didn't talk about this. Sometimes you want to understand something tiny, like a 5-minute thing, but you're not going to go schedule a 5-10 minute meeting with someone. And so you go on for months just deprioritizing that thing, Whereas in the office, you just literally just go sit next to someone and be like, hey, can you just quickly explain this thing to me? So things are a little bit more fluid and organic in the office. This especially matters for functions that touch other functions by nature, like product. In the same way that, like, if you're like a big gym guy, like I'm certainly not, but my friends who are like big on working out, they will always tell you that it's better to lift free weight rather than to use a machine, even for the same muscle. And you ask them why, it's because apparently just the effort that you put into balancing the bar, it nurtures on its own a bunch of like mini and micro muscles next to the main muscle that you're actually trying to grow. And so that just reinforces the entire section much more than just having everything fixed and just optimizing for one muscle.
Right.
So
you're sort of working on a system in that sense, right? Because
exactly. And so that ecology in the office, that circus of energy that you have, especially in startups, it's very hard to recreate in a very systematic, methodical manner by just having a blocked calendar or something virtually. There's just these synergies and these incidental conversations and hallway interactions that really work together to complete the product and the process of product discovery that will never work together in quite the same way if you're remote. Yeah. Now, what I'm doing about this is, as I said, over communicating and over meeting, especially when it comes to projects that have complex technical requirements that we need to think really long and hard about. And then B, occasionally meeting just to get to know each other. Like really, we product and design, we actually were supposed to meet yesterday, but we obviously postponed it because the weather in Egypt is randomly dangerous for 2 days this week.
It looks like all over the world, actually. Texas just got snow here.
Yeah, it's weird. So we're meeting in an outdoors area just to have brunch together, talk about the roadmap, talk about the future strategy. What is it that we should do, how we should look at our, where the company is in the SaaS world. And we should just do that for its own sake, right? Like, I can't sit down today and with a straight face tell you that like XYZ products that we're doing now will be better because we did, we had brunch together. That's not quite how it works. But it develops relationships between people in a good way, develops trust. It shows you a side of each person that you just can never see if all you see out of them is these increments of 30 or 60 minutes, each weekday. Sometimes you see them on video and sometimes you don't. So, as much as possible, like, you live with the knowledge that COVID is here to stay, but at the same time, work within it to make the best out of it. That's really all anybody can do.
Mm-hmm. And I'm sure, COVID was a reality check for a lot of people. I think there's going to be a lot of innovation in this field in the coming period, and how we can replicate that kind of presence and that kind of serendipity between people and the work that they're doing. I had one more question before we close, at least for today. 2021 just started the year. As someone that is leading a product organization and possibly a unicorn, what are your priorities for this year?
This is all of a sudden more specific to Instabug, so let me provide just a little bit of context.
Sure.
So as I said, we help companies understand what's going on when it comes to how their app is functioning. And I say how their app is functioning as opposed to how their users are behaving as an intentional statement. So we're leaning much more into that during 2021. And that's the broad statement. So we are marshaling our marketing and sales and messaging and growth, I guess, rhetoric around, we are the #1 choice that you as an enterprise customer should and could choose to monitor your app quality. Everything about app quality, like whether it's latency, whether it's launching, whether it's bugs, whether it's crashes, whether it's UI hangs, whether it's network requests, it's execution traces that you create yourself. What else am I missing? I don't think I'm missing anything.
What about
We
you?
just,
Like what are some of your own priorities, like you personally?
so outside of Instabug.
Well, in or out, like you as Nabil, like what are some of your priorities?
Got it. So let me start with in. Like, I really want us to realize this vision of becoming a 360-degree app quality monitor, and it's really not easy. Like, we have to do a ton of projects to get there. We have to really, part of it is introducing new features. A second part is getting our messaging and rhetoric right, and a third part is revisiting our information architecture so that it screams monitoring and app quality, like that's what we do. So we're doing a lot of this stuff this year. So I really want to oversee this stuff and kind of just get it to the other side. And then it's hard. The second part is, I guess, I'd love to see during 2021 an appreciation of what we took for granted. I think the vaccine is landing in Egypt as we speak. I think by maybe June or July, you'll see that a good portion of the population has taken it. And maybe by October, November, life will have returned to normal, or any semblance of normal. And I just hope that we really appreciate what it means to like be able to see each other again, and hug people that you haven't seen in a while, and just go all over the place. We're already a very physical and emotional like country, Egypt, but it's just it's broken a lot of things. It's pressured a lot of people into communicating with each other in ways that they never would have imagined possible or doable. And I just would really like to, like, on a personal level, on a social level, I'm not gonna really do a lot of just networking type, oh, we haven't seen these people in a while, so I'm gonna go see them. What COVID has taught me is seeing people and taking out of your weekday or weekend to go and actually spend time with them is is valuable. So I'm going to reserve that time to people who I really like and who I have a bond with, right? Like, it's not going to be some like, oh, there's this event somewhere that like a friend of a friend told me about, right? It's going to be more like, hey, there's this family. They've been wanting to see us for ages. We really like them, but they're on the other side of town. Let's make time and go to them. And so you prioritize based on what you actually feel and how easy it was to not, how easy it is to, I don't think I'm phrasing this right.
It certainly is something that we've
How easy it is to take them for granted,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And you just kind of counterintuitively go the other way, and you're like, oh, it's hard to see them, therefore I want to see them because it means a lot, as opposed to just doing things out of convenience as if your time doesn't really mean anything, right? So it's taught me a lot about what to prioritize when I see people.
I think that's a great note to end on. I think a lot of challenges came our way over the last year, but I think the people that are resourceful, people that are learning from it, are actually getting something out of it. So I salute you for that realization, and I'm looking forward to hearing a lot more about you and Instabug and how you guys are progressing in your journey. Thank you, Nabil.
Absolutely.
For your time.
Sure.
Um,
Absolutely.
I'm sure this is not going to be the last. There are a ton of questions, ton of ideas I wanted to discuss with you, but let's keep this short, and hopefully we'll be meeting again.
All right. Sounds good. Ehab, thank you so much. And it's been a pleasure being here.
Talk to you soon. Bye.
Yeah.